Welcome back to Ask the Trade Pros, a show where a couple of trade guys talk about trade stuff. We're here to answer all your questions about your HVAC, electrical, and plumbing systems so you can keep your home running smoothly. I'm Todd.
Hey, I'm Jordan.
With constant changes in technology, it can be hard to figure out what is worth your time and money and what is just clever marketing. HVAC upgrades are no exception to this. We all want to be comfortable in our homes, and when a new shiny technology comes along promising efficiency and comfort, how do we know what's actually going to work for us and our homes?
So today, we're going to try to figure this all out and cut through the hype. We'll talk about some of the more popular HVAC options that are out there now and what they'll do for your home, if they're worth your time, and the expense that they always cost to get right.
So I guess a few things that we can talk about, Jordan, is, well, I guess we'll start with the most popular. So some rooms get hotter than others. So typically everyone's leaning towards mini splits now, putting mini splits in various locations, garages even, mostly master bedrooms, places where they just don't get enough of that cold air.
Yeah, I see a lot of hype online about mini splits, people talking about zoning the house or how inexpensive this system is or that system is. And it's not always true for us here. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of really useful places to put a mini split, but there's also a lot of misconceptions about what the system costs and what it does for your house.
Yeah, I guess it would be based on your needs. So do you have a huge house and it's just you living in the house, or yourself and your partner living in the house, and you don't want to keep your whole house at 70 degrees when you only spend 90% of your time in one or two rooms, then, mini split would be a good solution for that and definitely save money depending on how efficient of a system you put in. You can zone that system.
Yeah, out here they're very good for that application. Where I have an issue with the mini split is when people read online about doing their whole house on mini splits and zoning every room. There's a lot of drawbacks to that. For one, mini split systems cost exponentially more the more heads you add to the unit. It's not just, you don't get a 5-headed unit for less than you would get 5 individual heads. It actually costs more for a 5-headed unit than a 5 single-headed units. Then you have a lot of piping to run, a lot of electrical to run, a lot of power to go. Now, I love them for a bedroom. Like if you want to keep, like as you were saying, Todd, if they want to keep their bedroom super cold, like to sleep cold at night, they're super efficient. They're straightforward. They allow you to keep that room good. As you said, we see a lot in garages. It's super hot out here. People don't want to go in there and work, or they got their tool room. Or I had a customer the other day that kept her artwork at her garage and didn't want it to be 105. So they put a mini split in there, takes the edge off. Offices are good. If you have a home office, you want to keep that one room cold.
Yeah, a lot of people are turning their garage into home offices now.
Correct. Or he sheds, she sheds, whatever you call the shed in your backyard that now, since COVID, we start working in. They're great for those applications. They're reasonably efficient to put in, straightforward in the installation, do well for heating and cooling, but they have their drawbacks. For example, if you put in a whole home system, I have some friends that live in Europe and they use it all the time, but their houses weren't built with ducts. So adding ductwork, tearing the house apart, doing all that is very expensive. They also don't cool every room. They want to keep 1 or 2 rooms in the entire house cool. So if you put a mini split for your whole home in, you're not going to have the bathrooms, you're not going to have cooling, the kitchen's not going to have cooling. You're just going to have the bedrooms, the main space, a lot of common areas, etc.
Yeah, so I guess besides the mini split, there's some other HVAC upgrades that are common. Smart thermostats are obviously popular, and it seems like every day there's more and more brands of them coming out and claiming to do different things. There's humidifiers, dehumidifiers, different types of air purification. I don't think smart thermostats are very new, so I think we've done previous episodes on smart thermostats. So
We've expressed how much we don't like the thermostat being smarter than us. It confuses us and confuses our customers, and it tells you what to do, when your house is going to be what temperature and how it's going to be that way. The Wi-Fi application is nice, but I'm not a huge fan of the smart process of the smart thermostat.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so now it's becoming popular that, these what we call communicating systems, they have their own special thermostat. So depending on what brand it is, it will be that brand of thermostat, and it can actually be linked to your HVAC service company and notify them of problems as the problem's occurring in real time. So you may not be aware of a problem that you're having, but if you're linked to your HVAC contractor, they're going to know of a problem and be able to help identify that problem and come up with a solution before it becomes a costly problem.
That's worth the hype as it is. A lot of those communicating communicating. They're more expensive systems, but it's just like cars now. So we had a customer who had one of these communicating thermostats, and we could not find the problem. But the communicating thermostat actually takes a vast amount of data off the system. It had sensors. We could get access from the manufacturer, and they would tell us within seconds every error occurring on that unit by the second. So it would hit high pressure at 12:31 in 12 seconds, and then it would go down, and then it would go up. And the amount of data allowed us to pinpoint the time and the issues, what's going on with it, and properly diagnose it, where on a previous type system, you're just guessing, well, the most likely culprit is this. You try that, and if it doesn't fix it, then you move on to the next one. This system, because of the integrated electronics, actually gave us the feedback you need to precisely diagnose the problem. So that kind of feature is actually quite useful should you ever have a problem.
Yeah, and so let's talk about air purification as well.
Love air purification.
Yeah, that's becoming very popular nowadays. There's different types of air purification. Now there's LED technology, ozone technology. I think ozone may be becoming a thing of the past. Everyone's moving towards LED technology, which I know is Jordan's favorite.
Well, people always ignore the air in their house. They say, oh, it's fine, or I don't care that there's VOCs, or my house smells like my dirty dog or my 17 cats. It's fine. I like it. I'll just open the window when it's 110 out. Really, air purification is a great device. It helps with allergies, helps with pet dander, helps with bacteria. We all learned what LED lights do. Don't swallow them, but otherwise they're good. Some of the best devices out there are amazing. You'll notice you'll feel better at home, even if you have mild allergies, and you won't understand why. But they're very effective devices now. They're very reliable. They used to be less reliable. They used to use a mercury bulb. As Todd said, now they use LED bulbs, so you get the same life as your LED bulbs everywhere else. They last 100,000 hours rather than whatever the mercury bulbs used to do. And they can do amazing things. They can release ions into the air. They can UV light, so they killed. What we found a lot lately is we're finding a lot of mold on heat pumps and allergies. We had a customer the other day that has spent 6 months trying to figure out why he's wrong, and the doctors finally diagnosed him. He had mold buildup in his ducts on an older home out here, and he just never noticed. So air purification would have helped with that. The ion would have helped with that. The UV light would have helped with that. The top line models, which would create naturally occurring peroxides, would sterilize the air and help reduce all that, and he probably wouldn't have had the health issues he had.
Yeah, now these air purification devices that we're talking about are devices that mount directly onto your HVAC system and go throughout every duct and register in your house, not just a standalone system that you could buy off of Amazon that you put in your living room. That's only going to help with that area, not go through all of the ducts in your house.
Not the same scale and detail. These have far more features to them. Like Todd said, they cover the entire house. They even treat more than the duct system. They treat the air in the house, the surfaces of the house, your counters, your floors, your walls, because it releases these particles in there. I mean, we're not so bad at our air here, but I heard stories people in other countries used to ship fresh Canadian air in cans into their house because their air quality was so bad.
That's a good one. Well, besides that, so we've covered some thermostats, some communicating systems, mini splits. So here, really, we could talk a little bit about air filters, the MERV ratings on air filters, different types of air filters, charcoal air filters, a lot of different air filters and sizes of filters, the thickness of the filter that can last longer than others or help remove more particles from the air.
Filtration is definitely worth it too. It's not the same as what we just talked about purification. One sterilizes the air, one just pulls things out of the air, but filtration's great. We have a lot of customers that are a huge fan of what's called an April Air. It's a brand. They make a filter that can last 6 months to a year. If you're that person that always forgets to change your filters or never changes your filters, they cost a lot more, but you buy one every 6 months or every year, so they probably evens out after the end. It does simplify the process of changing your filter though, and they're very high. What Todd was talking about, it's called the MERV rating, and it's a measurement of how small of particles the filter pulls out of the air. The higher the MERV, the smaller the particle it pulls out. And these kind of filters are very high MERV rating. 13, you can even get a 16, which is hospital grade.
Yeah, you do have to be careful though. So you have to know if your return is sized appropriately for the MERV you want to put in. And what I mean by that is
don't just shove filters in there.
Yeah, if you put too high of a MERV in there, your filter size or your return duct size might be inadequate to.
You're choking your furnace.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to choke the air. It's a sealed system, so what what it takes in, that's what it can put out. So if you're
If it can't
restricting
breathe,
the
it don't
input,
work.
you're not going to have the output.
Same here, but they are worth it. So good filtration is definitely worth it as long as you do it correctly. You could always talk to your professional HVAC technician about what's appropriate for you, what your system can handle. They'll take a look at the design. It's really a quick analysis. Generally, they can see what kind of static pressure the system pulls and tell you if it's working fine with that filter or if you have to do other options. But I really buy into the air purification. I think that's one of the popular features now that's actually worth the money you spend on it.
I agree.
What other new shiny gadgets do you like for the HVACs?
I'm not sure that I have any that we could talk about or that we could trust necessarily.
Yeah. If you've been a tradesperson long enough, you learn to let the product be out for 10 years before you recommend it to somebody.
Yeah, there's new stuff every day, but whether it works or not is the other side of it.
Yeah,
So
a lot of gimmicks.
the only other thing we really didn't talk about yet, and it's not necessarily new, is humidifiers or dehumidifiers. Now, we know that humidifiers typically you use in the wintertime when the air is dry, and dehumidifiers when it obviously to remove humidity, but a lot of people don't know that a AC is a dehumidifier itself.
Now, if we were in Florida or Georgia or something like that, we might want dehumidifiers. It's a special setting, it's a special adaptation. And a lot of the new machines have a dehumidification setting in them. It kind of adjusts the airflow in the system to help pull more humidity out than normally. But you kind of want you want some humidity in your house. There's a comfort level. Most people, according to whatever scientific studies we read and they train us, the humans are comfortable between 30 and 50% humidity. That's our comfort zone. So obviously, if you're below that, you want a humidifier. If you're above that, you want to dehumidify. Now, I had a couple of customers that had very, very expensive rare birds, and they had to keep the house at a very precise humidity because that's what the birds lived in. And obviously they cared more about their birds' comfort than their own. So the house had gone to the birds. But dehumidification normally is not needed. Your air conditioner can handle that unless you're in an extremely humid environment. Now, humidifiers depends on where you live. We're in Tucson, Arizona here. We've talked about water purification and all that in other episodes. Our water's garbage. It has so much stuff in it. Most of the time we put in humidifiers out here, we have to service them so often to keep them running because they, even with water treatment on the house, they just fail.
Yeah, not a good idea. I wouldn't recommend it.
No, I say you could go to a hardware store and buy a room humidifier. So if you're a lot of people worried when they sleep, they want a little moisture in there, go buy the cheap one at the hardware store. They're cheap now because little simple machines put in your room, humidify just that room. Because when it breaks, you throw it away and buy a new one. If I put a $5,000 home humidifier system in your house and we have to maintenance it constantly and then it breaks, you're not going to be very happy. When you can go buy one for $100 at the hardware store and it'll last you a couple of years. Well, aside from that, I think generally just talk to your trusted trade pro. Make sure you have a knowledgeable and well-experienced trade pro, but also get one that constantly updates their information and goes through training because these products do change. And as Todd said, we may not buy into a product the first couple of years it comes out, but you want some feedback on how that product worked, what their customers have experienced with it, how effective it is. Make sure that it's the real deal, not the gimmick. And of course, whenever, just call your trusted trade pro and get the advice you need.
Thank you for listening to Ask the Trade Pros. We release new episodes every other Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a question you would like us to answer on the show, please leave us a voicemail or an email, and we may feature your question in an upcoming episode. That information is in the show notes. This podcast is sponsored by the good folks at Done Right Services. As always, thank you for your support.